My stepdaughter said, "You're not my dad." My wife added, "Then have your own kid." I just smiled. Next morning, divorce papers and empty accounts left them panicking. Hello Reddit I+ here. My name's Daniel, I'm 46, and I've been a plumber for over 20 years. Not glamorous work, but honest. And it paid well enough that by the time I was 29, I owned a small 3-bedroom house outright. My brother Mark and I built our own plumbing business from scratch, and we did all right. At 31, I met Rachel at a neighborhood cookout. She was 27, divorced, and raising her 6-year-old daughter, Mia. The ex was a deadbeat. Vanished when Mia was barely a toddler, sending the occasional $100 check whenever guilt hit him. Rachel was barely scraping by, working part-time at a daycare and driving a Honda that coughed black smoke every morning. Mia was this shy little thing who hid behind Rachel's legs when I said hello. But a few months into dating, something happened that still sticks with me. Rachel was working late, and Mia took a bad spill on her bike. The daycare called me. Apparently Rachel had already listed me as the emergency contact. I showed up, cleaned her scraped knee, patched her up with cartoon band-aids, and then, through tears, she looked at me and whispered, "Thanks, Daddy." Not Dan, not Mr. Daniel, Daddy. I froze, my throat tightened. Because that wasn't just a word to her, that was a lifeline. I asked Rachel about it later, and she admitted Mia had been asking for weeks if I was going to be her new dad. That moment changed me. I never planned on having kids, but from then on, she was mine. By the time Mia was 7, Rachel and I got married. She insisted on being flower girl and ring bearer, saying, "It's my wedding too." Everyone laughed, but to me it felt true. She wasn't baggage I inherited. She was family I chose. Those early years were golden. Saturday mornings were sacred, me and Mia grabbing pancakes at a greasy diner before heading to Home Depot for some half-baked building project. She called me Dad like it was the most natural thing in the world, and it melted me every single time. I started a college fund when she was 8, put money aside religiously. By 13, she had over $15,000 waiting for her. My friends told me I was a saint for raising another man's kid, but it didn't feel like that. I wasn't raising someone else's child. She was mine. But then, she hit high school, and everything changed. At first, it was the classic teenage stuff. Eye rolls, short answers, shutting herself in her room. I told myself it was just a phase. But then she stopped calling me Dad. The first time I heard her say, "Daniel, can you get me this?" I swear it felt like a punch to the gut. One night at Target, she actually said to Rachel, "Can Daniel buy me the nicer notebooks?" Like I wasn't standing right there. I pulled her aside later and asked, "Why are you calling me Daniel?" "I'm your dad." She shrugged. "Whatever, you know what I meant." Rachel brushed it off. "It's just teen stuff." But it wasn't. It got worse. Soon, everything I gave her was not enough. Shoes had to be the $200 pair. The iPhone wasn't the right color. Her friends had designer bags. So why didn't she? And every time I tried to draw a line, Rachel defended her. "She's just finding herself. Don't be so hard on her." But I started keeping track of what finding herself was costing me. Hundreds every month, not counting the roof over her head, the car insurance, the braces, the medical bills. And in return, silence. Disdain. Like I was a walking wallet she barely tolerated. The breaking point came at her 16th birthday. I'd saved up to get her a safe, reliable Honda Civic. She wanted a BMW because her friend's stepdad bought her one. When I surprised her with the Civic, she sneered and said, "My real dad would have understood." Her real dad? The man who hadn't sent a check in over a year? That cut deeper than she'll ever know. But the final straw, the moment that burned it all down, was at a dinner party. I had some friends over, just grilling, having drinks. We started talking about college savings, and I casually mentioned I'd saved enough to cover state school for Mia. She came waltzing into the living room, phone glued to her hand, and announced, "Actually, I got into NYU. Mom and I already talked about it." News to me. I said we'd need to discuss finances, because the fund wouldn't cover NYU's price tag. And in front of everyone, she exploded, accused me of being stingy, said I only ever made her feel guilty about money, said maybe I shouldn't have married a woman with a kid if I couldn't handle it. And then, the dagger. "Don't tell me what to do. You're not my dad. You're just some guy who pays for stuff." The room went silent. My friends looked at me with pity. And Rachel? She put her arm around Mia and said, "She's just stressed. Maybe we should end the night." Not a single word of correction. Not a shred of defense for the man who'd raised her daughter for 13 years. That night, I made my decision. The next morning, I emptied the college fund and transferred the money into my retirement account. Then I filed for divorce. Rachel was blindsided. Mia was furious. But I was done funding disrespect. 5 years passed. I rebuilt, expanded the business, bought a bigger house. Life was quiet. peaceful. Then, one afternoon, there was a knock on my door. Rachel and Mia stood there. Mia looked hollow, older, broken. Rachel looked desperate. They'd burned through everything. The BMW she finally got, repossessed, college, dropped out. Rachel, divorced again, broke, and they came to me, hoping for help. I looked at Mia, the girl who once handed me dandelions and called me daddy, and all I saw was the teenager who'd humiliated me in front of my friends. I simply said, "You told me I wasn't your father. You were right. Good luck." And I closed the door. Rachel and Mia stood frozen on my porch after I shut the door. I could hear muffled voices outside, but I didn't care enough to listen. I walked back to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and sat down at my table. For the first time in years, I felt free. The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Rachel. "Daniel, please, can we at least talk? She's still your daughter, no matter what she said." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "No, Rachel. She made it clear I was never her father. You agreed. Now you live with the consequences." Not 5 minutes later, my brother Mark called. Danny, you're trending." "What?" He chuckled darkly. "Rachel's airing your laundry on Facebook. She's telling anyone who'll listen that you abandoned your child in her time of need." I pulled up my phone, and sure enough, there it was. Rachel's big emotional post. Photos of Mia at 6, hugging me after a soccer game, captioned with, "He raised her for 13 years, and then turned his back when she needed him most. Money mattered more than love to him." The comments were pouring in. Half her friends were furious at me. The other half were asking questions she didn't want to answer. Because I still had the receipts, literally. I still had the bank records showing every payment for school trips, braces, dance classes, clothes, electronics. I had the paperwork for the college fund, how I had been saving since Mia was 8. I even had screenshots of text messages where she told me I wasn't her father, where she demanded I buy her luxury things, or else. So, instead of replying online, I called Rachel directly. She picked up on the second ring, her voice shaky. "Daniel, please. You don't understand." I cut her off. "Number, you don't understand. You two spent years draining me dry and treating me like trash. Then you humiliated me in my own home. And now that you're broke, I'm suddenly dad again? Sorry, Rachel, but you don't get to rewrite history." There was silence, then a faint sob, and in the background, I heard Mia's voice, sharp and entitled as ever. "Just tell him to give us the money. That's what he's good for." Rachel tried to muffle it, but it was too late. My chest tightened. Any last flicker of pity I had for her evaporated in that moment. "Goodbye, Rachel," I said, and I hung up. 2 weeks passed. I didn't hear from them directly again, but word traveled fast in our town. Turns out Rachel had lost her job. Mia had dropped out of New York University after one semester when the tuition bills piled up. They'd been evicted from their apartment and were living with one of Rachel's cousins. Mark came by one night with a six-pack. "You hear the latest?" he asked. I raised an eyebrow. "What now?" "Mia's working part-time at a diner. Rachel's begging around for loans. Everyone who defended them online is ghosting them now that the truth's coming out." I didn't smile, didn't laugh, but I did feel something settle in me. Not joy, not gloating, just closure, because for years I thought I'd failed as a father. That maybe if I'd been more patient, more giving, more something, Mia wouldn't have turned on me. But the truth? Some people will always see kindness as weakness, and when you keep giving without boundaries, they stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as a bank. That night, I sat on my porch, beer in hand, watching the sun dip below the trees. Mark leaned against the railing and said, "You know, Danny, you did fix everything in the end." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He smiled faintly. "You gave her a home when she didn't have one. You gave her a father when she needed one most. And when she threw it away, you gave her the lesson life was always going to teach her anyway. That nothing is free. You did your job. The rest was on her." And for the first time in years, I believed him. 5 years later, I ran into Mia again by pure accident. I was leaving a supply store when I saw her waiting tables at a diner across the street. She looked tired, worn out, a shadow of the bright little girl I once knew. Our eyes met for a split second. I saw recognition flash. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, maybe sorry, maybe help, but I just nodded politely and walked away. Because she was right, all those years ago. I wasn't her father. I was the man who chose to be her dad, and she chose to throw that away, and I never looked back.